What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? They learned important lessons on the fields and courts of their high school and collegiate sports teams. This is true for both men and women. Ernst & Young found that a whopping 94% of women holding a C-suite position played sports. Their wins and losses shaped their habits and who they would become. Join me on my journey to sit with some of the brightest executives in the world as we discuss how sports shaped their professional trajectory in life. I'm your host, Don Yeager, and this is Corporate Competitor Podcast.
Times have changed a little bit in terms of how we work, but I would always tell individuals, I used to do my job from 8 to 5. I would learn the business from 5 to 8. And the 5 to 8 portion is real important. I liken that to this conditioning. You make a difference. You grow when people don't see you.
With me for today's episode is AT&T's Public Sector President, Xavier Williams. When AT&T acquired Time Warner, it became the largest communications company by revenue in the world. Xavier has received numerous awards throughout his career, including AT&T's Corporate Chairman's Diversity Award and Savoy Top 100 Most Influential African Americans in Corporate America. Xavier played basketball for Edinboro University and was recently named a distinguished alumni there. I am excited to discover how he uses the lessons from the court in his leadership at AT&T. Xavier, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Don, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the experience. So thank you for having me today.
You know, Xavier, you were a high school basketball player in Washington,
Yes.
D.C., hotbed
Yes.
of high school basketball, a lot of great talent there. The story of your recruitment to Edinboro University almost seems like the start of a movie, right? Can you share that story with our listener and about the 2 inches of snowfall that changed your life?
Yeah, as you mentioned, I grew up in Washington, D.C., and if anybody from the East Coast and people who don't do well in snow, in the D.C. area, if there's a chance of snow, they may close the city. One February day, my senior year in high school, we got 2 inches of snow. By 11 o'clock, it had melted. So true story. So of course, in the afternoon, if you play sports, what do? You want to go get up some shots. My AAU coach had called and said, hey, there's going to be a run over at this gym. There are going to be a couple coaches there. I'm just going to really get some exercise, see what's going on. And the coach from Edinboro, assistant coach from Edinboro University was there, Tim Smiley. I guess I did well. He took a liking to what I did. And as they say, the rest is history, because this is a university that I had never heard of at the time. He obviously was not coming to recruit me. There was a specific individual that he was targeting that I found out after the fact. And Don, I'm not trying to brag, but I was killing him that day. So I guess as they say, the rest is history.
That's when he scratches one and says, oh, no, I was here for Xavier all the time, right?
Got to justify the trip.
That's right. We were always here for you, brother. That's right. At Edinboro, your coach was Duke Sims, right?
Yeah.
He was known for his gift of bringing together diverse young men, many of whom had come from challenging circumstances, and then working specifically on showing them how to be successful, both not just on the court. Obviously, that's his requirement, but off the court. Tell me about that experience and what you remember learning from Coach Sims.
Yeah, so first of all, great man. He's passed now, from Pittsburgh. If you know that area, grew up around Duquesne. He did not grow up with a proverbial silver spoon in his mouth. We had, I'm not exaggerating when I say this, white, black. We had kids from Africa. We had kids from overseas. We had a melting pot. So one of the things that Coach Sims always taught us was bet on people, because at the end of the day, people are what we're investing in. People are what make the world go round. And he was always very good at motivating individuals, as a coach, and I've actually learned this from a business standpoint, and I didn't know what it was called when he did it, but he would always see the big picture. He wasn't paying attention to one thing. And true story, one of my teammates, we were playing. My teammate was in an argument with the referee. And I'm like, Coach Sims, you don't see them arguing. And he really didn't see it because he was looking at the field. He was looking at the entire court. And when I said something to him, he didn't question me immediately. He took the player out. He yelled at the referee, and everything was good. And I was like, wow, that's a very interesting leadership lesson. From one, he was looking at the bigger picture. Two, he trusted what I said. He didn't even he didn't question at all. He just said, okay, if he said that, that must be happening. He diffused the situation. He stood up for his player,
right?
You know, all those things. And I mean, and that was 30 seconds. And there were so many stories like that that I've experienced with Coach Sims.
And you think about that, there's probably a master's degree in leadership in that 30 seconds.
There you go. There you go. So it was very good man. Very good man.
You know, as you mentioned, he passed away recently, and
Yes.
I had the chance to read his obituary as I prepared to interview you. Fellow players noted that he gravitated to young people who needed that second or third chance sometimes. What kind of lasting impact does that have on you and your thoughts on, especially now, right? As we've already identified, you have an enormous leadership platform. But what kind of impact does a guy like that have on you?
Yeah. So a couple of things that I always think back on him. Judge a person based on their entire body of work. Don, I've known you for a while. You've known me for a while. There are probably some things we've done that we're not proud of. Everyone has that. Everyone has done something. It's just whether it was done in the light of day or was it, you know, you were fortunate enough that it didn't come up. And he would always make sure that people understood the entire individual as opposed to harping in on either literally the good thing or the bad thing. It was the body of work. So that's first and foremost. The second thing, I would now characterize it as the term culture trumps strategy. He would always say, look, we're going to have a good game plan, but at the end of the day, it's what team wants it more. Who wants it more? And that's culture. Who wants it more? You can have a great strategy, but if your opponent wants it more than you do, if there's a loose ball on the floor and you're not willing to die for it, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And he would always impart that on us on every situation. And at times, it's sort of funny. I can't remember how old he would have been when he would play with us, but he would, at practice, he would get in there and mix it up with us if he had to make his point. So those are some of the lasting impacts he had on me.
Wow. I love that. But you're right. Culture trumps strategy. And I'm looking forward to when we get later in this interview to talk about how you've used that in your growth.
Sure.
You know, while at Edinboro, one of the things that stood out to me as I looked at your career, right, your time there, was that every year your numbers got better, right? Your points per game, your average shooting percentages improved every year. What were the keys and what were you learning about the need for constant improvement there?
Yeah, I think, so one, you got to put in the time and effort to get better. That's first and foremost. The coach that had recruited me up to Edinboro, Tim Smiley, great man, he would always impart on us, add a tool to your tool belt every offseason. Add something to it. Don't forget the tools that you already have in your tool belt too. So, you know, if you use a hammer, don't forget that hammer, but go learn how to use a screwdriver. Go learn how to use a wrench. And he would impart on us, making sure that we were always trying to do better, learn better, ensuring that we understood the entire game of what we were trying to do. And just put in the work was the key thing that they would always impart on us. I was very fortunate that individuals would invest in me, not just from a physical standpoint, but I mean mentally and making sure I was doing my schoolwork and all that different type of stuff. So as I got more comfortable in my career, got more comfortable in my surroundings, it was a welcome experience. And I'm very fond to say, I know I went to Edinboro as a boy and I left as a man. what more could you want in a college experience? And that's
Right.
one thing when I look back on the school that I'm very fond that I have that feeling and I have that sentiment.
It's interesting. You went there, as you said, midway through your senior year, you'd never even heard of the school, right? In high
Hadn't
school.
heard of it.
And yet it turned out to be one of those places that would completely turn your life around.
Oh, absolutely.
That,
Absolutely.
that's kind of funny, right? Sometimes we think we have a direction or we've mapped things
Yep.
and then,
What's the saying, Don? Man plan, God laughs.
Yep,
So,
exactly. Right. So, got a chance to check in with the Edinboro Sports Information Department, and
okay.
one of the
Okay.
things that they shared with us is that you played along some guys that were some fun names. They were talking about Tom Taylor. You mentioned Jose Davis earlier, Billy Wade.
Yeah.
Wondering, was there a teammate who you felt playing against in practice made you better?
Yes. 3 names come to mind immediately. So one, when I came in, there were 2 other freshmen that came in with me, actually 3, but 2 of the 3 actually had a big impact on my life. George Sattler was from the Pittsburgh area. I think it was Keystone Oaks is where he went to high school. Left-hander and work ethic like none other. He would work his tush off to the point, Don, after games, he would go and shoot. After games, he would still be putting work in to get better. And I think, I don't know, he shot 85, 90% from the free throw line, all that different type of stuff. So he taught me about hard work. Junior college transfer, one of my best friends to this day, Billy Snow, all 5'8" of him, toughest guy on the team. And from a mental aspect, he would be pounding us, littlest guy on the team, pounding us, and would always say, winners never quit, quitters never win. He would just pound that into me. Literally, when I get tired, I still hear his voice. Not just running, but I mean at work. If I get tired, I hear his voice like, winners never quit, quitters never win. And then lastly, from a physical aspect, a young man by the name of Eric Trosh, Pittsburgh area, went to West Mifflin High School. Eric was special from this vantage point. Me and Eric would get into physical altercations in practice, so the physicality aspect of it. But this is why I would love Eric all the time. And I was probably 6'4", 160 wet. He was probably 6'5", 200. And we would go at it. When the game started, you know who was my protector? Eric Trosh. He wouldn't let anybody touch me. Now, back in practice, I was meat to him. But he taught me about the physicality and taught me about the value of teamwork and being a good teammate. Because if that, and just being blunt, we would be physical and you might get into a tussle with the opponent. He was always the first one that had my back. Always the first one. Those are some of the folks I learned a lot about.
I love that. But, the one, when you talk about that last player there, one of the things that strikes me is that being a great teammate is a skill.
Yes.
Right? People think it's an aw shucks thing sometimes. Nah, man. Being a great teammate is a skill.
You have to be intentional. It is intentional. You have to be very intentional in it. And he was one of those guys that had a lasting impact on my life.
Wow. The premise of this podcast is that, the numbers make a point that disproportionate number of Fortune 500 executives, C-level executives, were actively engaged in sports, either the high school or collegiate level, and that experience did help shape the way they lead even today. First, do you agree that being an athlete made you a better leader?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The will to win, the will to compete. Simple, we always have the catchphrase, no pain, no gain. From a leadership perspective, one, if you're an athlete, whether you're on a team sport or individual sport, you have a leader and a coach. You have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to articulate what you're trying to do and understand the goal that you're trying to achieve. And that is very important from a leadership perspective, not only understanding the goal that you're trying to achieve, but coming up with a pathway to get there being able to put in the work to achieve it, all those different types of things. I remember being in ninth grade, my high school coach, we had lost the game, and he went around the locker room and asked, "Why do you play? Why do you play? Why do you play?" And at the end of it, he said, "You play to win. You play to win." And that was like ninth grade, what, 14, 15 years old. That was like, oh, okay. Like, okay, this is why we do that. And again, from a leadership perspective, you want to be associated with winners. You want to be associated with people who have a focus and a focal point in mind, as I said earlier, a goal that they're trying to achieve. And that, as being an athlete, made me a better leader. One more point I would make: when you're an athlete, and hopefully you're a student athlete, you got to learn to balance stuff too. You can't over-index on one and under-index on the other. You got to learn to have balance. And when you're leading people, you have to have a balanced approach in what you're trying to achieve. So I know for me, those things have been invaluable for me as a leader and an individual in society.
And as a leader, you've obviously, through the course of your career, you've hired a lot of folks. Does whether or not someone has participated in sports catch your attention?
Oh, absolutely. When you're trying to connect with a person, that's a natural icebreaker. So that's first and foremost.
Right.
And one of the things that, when you're interviewing for someone or you're trying to pick a new leader, you want to engage them and see how they think. Literally, does their motor run? All those different types of things. And it's talking about their experiences from an athletic standpoint usually leads you to some of those things. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, I said it earlier, the will to compete. Do you want to win? What are you willing to do to make sure that you're going to be successful is all important. The other thing, and it's a very important element and trait for me, is integrity. 99, and you know this better than me, 99 out of 100 athletes, they want to do it the right way. They want to do it the right way with a high level of integrity. They're not out there, cheating and doing all that different type of stuff. So having someone's background and knowing that they participated in athletics, it actually checks off a couple boxes up front for me.
Yeah, you're right. I love the point. I made a note here that the discussion about if you participated in sports, you understand the importance of sacrifice, right?
Absolutely.
To achieve something, you have to give up something most
Absolutely.
often, right? Most of us have to work for it. And so there's a value in knowing sacrifice. We're going to pivot here in the second half, and we're going to talk a little bit about how you've applied some of those lessons into the journey you've had as a great leader. Edinboro recently invited you back to be the commencement speaker. Loved watching that. And you said that you remember, one of the things you remember most as we talk about sacrifice and this idea is your 7 a.m. conditioning runs.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So what did that teach you, that willingness to get up every morning, hit the pavement, all those things about discipline that you use in your AT&T career today?
Yeah. So first of all, for those of you who don't know, Edinboro is in Northwest Pennsylvania. It's probably 15 or 20 miles from Lake Erie. 7 in the morning in the fall, in the winter, it's a fog over the campus. So you can't literally see in front of your face. And having to get up and run, there was always the, this full disclosure, there was always the element of, we could cut through campus and get on the other side quicker and no one would know the wiser. But it was around having the discipline to do it the right way. It was around having the discipline to understand that there's a purpose for this. Because the first time I did it, I was like, Coach, I didn't sign up to run cross country. I'm playing basketball. I don't understand this. So one, I had to trust that my coach was telling us the right thing to do. And look, when it was 3 minutes left in the game and the other team was tired and we were still fresh, it kicked in to say, okay, that's why we did it back then. The other thing for me is, and I tell young people this to this day, and it's times have changed a little bit in terms of how we work, but I would always tell individuals, I used to do my job from 8 to 5. I would learn the business from 5 to 8. And the 5 to 8 portion is real important. I liken that to this conditioning. you make a difference. You grow when people don't see you. So, of course, people would always see us at the basketball gym and judge us on how we were doing then. The thing that made our team special, the thing that got us over the hump was what you didn't see when we were up at 7 a.m, running laps around the campus and all that different type of stuff, getting in better condition. So that discipline has carried out through my career. And it's always I got to get up in the morning and make sure that I'm conditioned, whether it's my body, my mind, or whatever, to make sure that I could be ahead of the game and be able to thrive at the end of the game.
It sounds like, especially with your understanding of that, right? Do your job 8 to 5, and then what you do between 5 and 8 that allows you to grow. That constantly fuels that need to keep growing and bettering yourself.
Absolutely.
What kind of things are you doing today to better yourself?
So a couple things. One, of course, we're all voracious readers. You got to read. Everybody. I don't care if it's a book, a magazine, a blog. You got to read. One of the things that I'm learning now is you got to read stuff that's out of your comfort zone. Don't keep reading the same thing over and over again and you don't expand your mind. Read stuff that you really don't understand and try to expand your mind. So that's first and foremost. The second thing for me that's actually the most refreshing thing is mentoring younger people, or mentoring people in general, but mentoring younger people and getting their perspective on life, getting their perspective on things that I might not know about. So great example is social media. I don't understand social media, but I have people around me that if I need to know something, I could go and ask them a question and it's a safe zone. That always makes a big difference for me, that being able to engage with people and understanding different cultures, different ages, all that different type of stuff is important. And I would just say, look, Don, in this day and time, with what's going on in the United States around civil unrest and all that different type of stuff, talk to people that you normally won't talk to and get to know different perspectives in life, because at the end of the day, we all do have commonalities. You got to find them. You got to find the commonalities, build on them, and then embrace the differences. So I've been very fortunate that I'm able to do that and still try to do that, and just want to be a lifelong learner.
I love it. You mentioned earlier the importance of team culture, creating that culture, building that around. It's a huge discussion in leaders, has been the last couple of years. It's funny how the leadership discussion constantly progresses, but you shared a little bit about some of the culture building moments you experienced in sports, but I know there was one early aha moment where you learned about the importance of building the right culture with your organization. I'd love for you to share that here.
Yeah, sure. So at the time, we called it a branch manager or sales center vice president. So think of all places, I was running our branch in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This is a true story. There were 30 branches in the country. We ranked number 34. That's how bad we were. So I was sent there to turn it around. And it was after 2.5 years, we were number 4 in the country. We did not change a single individual. It was all about culture. And let me give you a couple of examples. I'm a week into my job. Someone walks into my office and they begin to tell me that they're planning to take a trip next spring. And I took this job in October. They're telling me that they're taking a trip to the Greek Isles in the spring of next year and telling me about, all the great places they're going to go. And, in my mind, I'm like, why are they telling me this? I mean, are they just being nice, or what are they trying to do? And at the end of the conversation, they said, well, so can I go? And my response was, I don't know, can you? I mean, I didn't know what they were asking me. And they said, well, your predecessor had a policy in place that said you had to get vacation approved 6 months in advance. And I was like, what? Okay, call a town meeting, get everyone together. What other rules or policies are out there that I don't know about that might be cultural mores as opposed to policy? And when we got a lot of those cleaned up and we empowered people, we let them make their decisions, they knew what to do, they were ultra successful, it turned everything around. Another thing that we did, it was a sales office by definition. Most of the salespeople didn't come into the office because it was so toxic. So we started getting people to come in, and we put a cowbell in the middle of the floor. And I don't care if you made a sale. I don't care if you went and met with a customer. If you wanted to ring the bell, everybody had to stop what they were doing and come celebrate your moment and come celebrate you. And again, it became a rallying cry around people just sharing and building camaraderie, building teamwork, all those different types of things. Because when someone would describe a sale, the next person would say, now, what did you do? How did you do that? And guess what? They would go make the same sale. So it was, as I mentioned, I mean, we literally were one of the top branches by the time I left that assignment, and didn't change a person at all. It was all culturally driven.
Wow. Where'd the idea for the bell come from? That's awesome.
One of my mentors, he was just like, what do you do to celebrate? And he was like, you got to figure that out. And we went and found the cowbell, and it was, and this true story. I was there in, I think that was probably around 2001. I went back there recently. It's still there.
Still the cowbell? Do they still use it?
Sometimes, but the bell is still there. It became part of the culture. It became part of the culture. So it's good to see your work just manifest over and over again. It's a good feeling.
I love that. You know, I know that you don't just lead in business, though. You have a huge heart for your community. You've been recognized by so many awards. Actually, it's funny, when I sent you the invitation to see if you'd join us today, I was like, man, you're like such an underachiever with all these awards.
Go ahead, man.
You even go back, speaking of mentoring, to Edinboro and deliver speeches and teach classes and help with kids. You talk a lot about goal setting and risk taking. How are you using the lessons you learned about goal setting and risk taking in sports in what you're doing professionally even today?
Well, one, always have a goal and objective and write it down. Make sure that you can see what your goal is. It shouldn't be a secret. The other thing is, not only do you write it down for yourself, share it with someone so you have an accountability partner. So if I say I want to learn Spanish and I never pick up a book to learn Spanish, pick up a recording to learn Spanish, my accountability partner needs to say, you know, hey, bro, what's going on here? What are you doing? So I try to be very regimented around always having goals set, being able to achieve those goals. But one thing I've learned over the years, use your goals as a North Star. There's this thing called life, and life might change what your goal is. So be flexible. Simple example I always use, and I'm in Dallas, Texas at the moment. If somebody says I need to get to LA, I know I need to go west. I know I need to get in a car, get on a plane, start walking, get on a bus, but I got to go west. I got to go west. And that way, that's my goal. Now, that doesn't mean that as I'm going to LA, somebody might say, well, we really need you in Denver. Okay, got it. I could pivot, I could change. But if I don't have a goal and know where I'm going, I'm just going to be walking around aimlessly.
Which you can do a lot of in Dallas if you choose to.
You can do a lot of it in Dallas.
You know, you mentioned, Billy and George and Eric and these great teammates who kind of pushed and sharpened your skills in basketball at Edinboro. On the corporate side, who's pushing you and helping you to improve today?
Oh, wow. Look, I have been at AT&T. It'll be 30 years in August of this year. And first of all, the list of individuals would be as long as my arm of people who have helped and supported me. But I mean, I would say our CEO just announced his retirement. He's going to be stepping down as CEO in July and leaving the business as chairman in December of this year. Randall Stevenson has had a dramatic impact on my life, not only from a business standpoint, but from a holistic standpoint and being a man and being able to speak truth to power. I mentioned in some of the things that are going on in the world today, he is working with the Business Roundtable and talking about racial injustice in the United States. He does not have to do that. He can ride off into the sunset and have a great life like he's always had, but he is putting a stake in the ground and making sure that he is leaving his mark, leaving his legacy, and trying to make things better for the people behind him. So from a business standpoint, that's one of the things, and I appreciate you saying, I've gotten a lot of accolades and awards. Look, I am riding on the shoulders of those who came before me. And my thing is just trying to pay it forward. And there have been so many great leaders that I've been able to watch and admire and just try to emulate. And Randall's one of those individuals.
Wow. Well, that's awesome. And I'm sure he knows that that's the case, but maybe one of these days you'll drop him a note. And
that's a good idea. That is a good idea.
In your role, I've read much about your commitment to customers. Mm-hmm. And it's what's allowed you to, and your piece of the company to continue to stand out and grow. And you're working with those customers through good and bad, right? I mean, especially government, right? I mean,
yes.
Budgets, non-budgets, whatever. How did your competitiveness and your competitive history help you as you were working with others through tough times?
We have a mantra, and I'm not going to claim that I started it. It's something that we just have always done, but having a refuse to lose attitude. And not going to name the customer, but it's a major metro. This has happened on more than one occasion. We have lost the deal. They have told us we have lost the deal, but we have been able to institute a culture and institute an approach that we keep going back to that customer and trying to see if we can help in other ways, because sometimes the competition might have oversold their solution. And if it doesn't work, if you maintain that relationship, they come back to us. And if you're not staying engaged and refusing to lose, you're not going to capture that business.
Conversely, you could be all teed up on that and decide to burn a bridge, which a lot of times happens, right? People get mad because they've lost, and then the opportunity for a comeback does not exist.
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah. Another lesson that I've learned, and it's sort of interesting from a business standpoint, but I equate it back to playing sports. Former governor of Pennsylvania, his name is Mark Schweiker, and not a lot of people know him because if you remember back to 2001, when the Department of Homeland Security was formed, Tom Ridge was the first head of DHS, right. And he was the governor of Pennsylvania. Right. His lieutenant governor was Mark Schweiker. So over the years, it was somebody I got to know, and he would always say to me, R before I. I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? And he would say relationships before issues. And he taught the lesson of how in life, in business, there's going to be an issue. There will be an issue. So the question is, do you have a relationship before that issue comes up? Or are you dealing with an issue trying to build a relationship at the same time? That's difficult, because if I'm walking in and it's a bad situation, it's going to be harder to solve. But if I've built a relationship with you up front, I don't want anything. I just want, have a foundation with you. When that issue comes up, it's a much different conversation and it's a much different approach and how you solve things. And this gets into, you got to put in the effort before the game. Relationships before issues. If you're not practicing, if you're not putting in the time before the actual game comes, the game is hard. So have tried to apply those over the years.
R before I. Love it.
That's simple.
Love it. I will be using that one in a discussion I'll have probably with two little people later tonight.
I know that feeling.
Again, I laugh at this law. I mean, talk about list as long as your arm, the awards and National Eagle Leadership Institute's AT&T Chairman's Diversity. But when you were asked to reflect on your greatest accomplishment in the Edinboro Alumni Magazine, I love it that you said that by far it's the pride you have in your family, 31 years of marriage, 2 children.
Absolutely.
What have you learned in your journey navigating work-life balance? Because so many of us feel like in order to be great at something, you have to be it, only it.
Yep. So first of all, I'm fond of saying, somebody taught me this saying earlier, my family is my future. There's going to be a day when I'm gone. The future is them. So I got to invest in them first and foremost. I don't always do as good of a job as I would want to, but I'm conscious of it and I work at it. And I always think about this euphemism around work-life balance. One thing I always think about is I can have life without work. I can't have work without life. So one of the things that I've always been cognizant of, my life is my most important thing. And then I have to slot work in there. And my most important thing is my faith. The second most important thing for me is my family. Then the third most important thing happens to be work. Doesn't have to be, but that's just where I rank it. And I try to live values accordingly around that to make sure that I can stop and make sure that I understand what's going on with my family and all that different type of stuff. And true story, Don. I mean, I remember the time where my daughter, the difference between my daughter's age and my son's age is 7 years.
Wow.
And my daughter was probably 8 or 9 years old. And, she's, how girls, their little brothers are their baby doll. And I remember her saying to him, look, Timothy, when he has that thing up to his ear, you don't bother him. If you can imagine, I melted like, oh, Lord. And that was one of those times that I got the look from my wife. And it was like, okay, I got to do better at this. So I wish I could say I was perfect all the time, but it's little reminders like that over the years have made me realize that my family is by far my greatest accomplishment.
Being present to them is powerful.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
One last question here. One of your favorite quotes is Ralph Ellison's "Play the game, but don't believe in it." Mm-hmm. I was fascinated. I mean, I've read multiple definitions of that quote and understandings of what Ellison meant and what others mean when they say it. I'd love to hear what I know what all you've accomplished it. What does it mean to you?
Look, back to what we were just talking about. The most important thing is your family, those around you. We are running in a game, the corporate game, be it, all different types of things. And if you don't keep it in perspective, you're going to lose yourself. And unfortunately, I have friends who have lost themselves and lost a lot around that. So I always realize, and it goes back to sports. This is a game. You want to win, but this is a game. You got to figure out what's important. Make sure that's first and foremost in your life. Build that, use that as your foundation for whatever you're going to do. But then go be successful in life. Go be successful in your chosen endeavor. Go be, go do the things that you want to do, but realize, hey, a lot of this is a game. A lot of this is a game. And I don't want to get too philosophical, but they're saying in the Bible where Solomon, wisest man in the world, when he started writing the last book that he wrote, it was really about all of this means nothing. Is what he said. It basically, all of this means nothing. So when I think about that quote, that's what I think about, and making sure that I'm investing in my wife, investing in my family, and doing those types of things.
Xavier Williams, you are a gift to many of us.
Thank you.
And,
thank you.
Today you shared your gift, and grateful for that. I look forward to being able to bless others with it. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your friendship. And I look forward to continuing to grow and learn from you.
Absolutely. And I appreciate this opportunity. This has been a great experience. So thank you for the opportunity.
Wow. My biggest takeaway from Xavier is the importance of a winning culture. I loved when Xavier talked about the difference between being good and being great. He recalled the early morning laps around Edinboro's campus and said that discipline, with no fans watching, paid off when everyone was watching. It is human nature to do things for applause and immediate gratification, but what are you doing behind the scenes when no one is watching? to prepare yourself for the next challenge. Doing the work from 8 to 5 is expected, but it takes a true corporate competitor to prepare and expand your knowledge from 5 to 8. Leaders are learners, and Xavier Williams is the perfect example. Thanks for listening to the show. Did you like what you heard? If so, subscribe to the podcast. We will be rolling out a new episode every Wednesday, and you can be the first to listen. Subscribe on our website, corporatecompetitorpodcast.com, or by texting subscribe to 58885, and you will receive a free chapter of one of my best-selling books. While you're there, remember to join the Greatness community. For a free weekly leadership lesson, I write for Forbes.com and information on my live and virtual keynote speeches. Stay in touch by connecting with me on social media at Don Yeager on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Finally, are you a corporate competitor? If so, tell me the story about a time when your athletic experience taught you a leadership lesson you still use today. Until next week, I appreciate you.